Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. Welcome. My name is Peter Bolland. Welcome to Friday Reflections, our weekly get-together here every Friday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific, daylight savings time. And it's my honor and my privilege to be here with you every Friday, as we've done many Fridays in a row. And I thank you all so much for coming back, and a special hello to all you first-timers who may be checking us out for the first time. Really appreciate you taking a shot on this. And I hope you decide to stick around, because for many of us, this has become a kind of a welcome benchmark on our fluid lives, on our wild weeks. And I know it certainly is for me. And I say that every Friday whenever I see y'all. So welcome and thank you. Friday Reflections is a program that doesn't have a script. I don't read a paper to you. Sure, I've got a couple of bullet points on a piece of paper over there, but I want to be alive with you and think through these things with you in an somewhat unscripted way. You know, I know how I'm starting and I know how I'm ending. I'm ending with a poem, but the middle's a little, well, we'll see. And the reason I want to do it that way is because every day is different. Every week is different. And just like you, I'm responding to the things I'm learning during the week, what I'm hearing on the news, the experiences I'm having in my garden, you know, in my relationships, and in the work that I'm doing, and in my dreams. And so we are alive and we are conscious and we are moving through something miraculous called life. And it's sweeter and better if we pause to reflect sometimes. And that's what Friday Reflections are, kind of stepping off of the hamster wheel for a little while, not too long, and kind of looking back and looking back into the world's wisdom traditions to see if there's something that we can use and apply to the situation we are in our everyday lives. So this week I've had an opportunity to, and many of you know this book, to spend some quality time with one of my favorite wisdom texts on the planet, and that is the Bhagavad Gita, here in the Eknath Easwaran translation. So if you scamper off to go book shopping today, this is the one you want. And many of you have studied it with me here at Oasis or in other places. Many of you have watched all 5 parts of my new 5-part video discussion of the Bhagavad Gita on my YouTube channel, Peter Bolland TV. So if you're on my newsletter, you already know about that. If you've subscribed to my YouTube channel, you already know about that. But today, in this time frame that we have, there's one passage, or there's one section, I should say, that kind of leaped out at me yesterday as I was revisiting the book. It's one of those books that, you know, I've been teaching it to college classes for 20 years. And every time I open it up, I fall in. I don't come back for a while. It is just the most remarkable piece of, and call it whatever you want, scripture, mythology, poetry, philosophy, you know, all those labels work. And there's a few passages I want to think about with you today, but you know, it is June, and God bless June. You know, I just love June. I have a favorite month, and it is happening right now. And I know every moment is a miracle. All the months are great and they have their magic, but there's something about June for me that is particularly delightful. And I don't know, it's just, do you remember when you were a kid? It's like, it's when school gets out. And now that I work as a teacher, it's like, yeah, school gets out. And suddenly, you know, a 100-pound boulder kind of comes off of your back. And it's June 1st is my wedding anniversary. Lori and I got married 36 years ago the other day, June 1st. And it's my birthday this month, and it's Lori's birthday this month. And so it's just fun all over the place. And when you walk outside, isn't there a sense in which the earth is blooming like a rose? It's opening up. There's a certain sense of openness and freedom in the air, and you can feel it right here. That's what June is to me. I love it. And yet, you know, just as busy as ever, just like you, and there's tons of work to do. And we all have our work to do. Even if you're quote unquote retired, that is, you're no longer employed in your primary career, or the kids are all grown and gone, or whatever station you are at in your life. You're working, right? There's 100 things to do, and you're taking care of so many things, and shepherding this project and initiating that project and meeting with these people and navigating the evolving COVID scenarios around us and figuring out what to do, when, with who, why, and how. And there is so much to do. All of our little artistic projects and our craft projects and our home improvement projects and our gardening and making that photo book finally from that trip you took to Germany 3 years ago. Everything that we have to do is work. And there's in Sanskrit, in India, in the language of the Bhagavad Gita, the word for work is karma. Now, when you and I hear the word karma, we tend to think of the law of cause and effect, and what goes around comes around, and this causing that, and all that's true too. But really, on a basic level, karma simply means action or work. And it's translated in English as one of those two words, either work or action. So I want to share some passages with you in a moment that are kind of about that. That might help you and help me tackle these tasks in front of us in a joyful, free way, and not view them as burdens that we, in our fantasy, wish we could cast off. Because that's the sort of surface dream, isn't it? That the best life is a life of leisure, sitting in a Chase lounge, reading trash novels. But if you had to sit in a Chase lounge and read trash novels for every moment of the rest of your life, you would lose your mind. There is something inside you that would just die. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with rest, right? I love a good Chase lounge session. But is that really what we want to do? Toes in the sand, drink in the hand, that sort of fantasy of getting away from it all. I get it. I'm all about escapism, but is that what we really want? Is that what the soul wants? I don't think so. And as I look at the world's wisdom traditions, it seems like what we really want is not to be idle all the time and to do nothing and have nothing asked of us and to contribute nothing. That's not what our soul is asking for. Our soul is asking for purpose, meaningful engagement. Our soul is asking for work that matters, action that is interconnected in a kind of communal project of tikkun olam, that Hebrew phrase I think of every day, healing the world. Why? Well, not just because we're annoying do-gooders, right? But because we recognize, even in an inarticulate, pre-verbal way, we recognize that our own joy is inextricably interwoven with purposeful work, with offering up our work as service. This is the secret of life, isn't it? That all work is service. And when we shift our thinking to see work not as self-aggrandizement or not as me getting mine, but as an opportunity to be a part of the symphony of the universe's giving birth to itself, that's when we are liberated by our work. But that's a big shift in mind, right? Remember last week we were talking about metanoia, about changing our mind or rebirth, thinking about things in an entirely new way. So real quick sketch on what the Bhagavad Gita is. And then I just want to share a couple of passages with you from mostly chapter 3, maybe a couple from 4, we'll see. So the Bhagavad Gita, for those of you who are not aware, maybe, or have just heard the title of this book, this book was written around the time of Christ. So roughly 2,000 years ago in India. And it's part of a much longer work of Indian mythology called the Mahabharata. It comes centuries after the Upanishads and probably thousands of years after the Vedas. So it's relatively recent. It also comes at least 500 years after the Buddha. But what is it? The Bhagavad Gita, it means the song of our Lord, the Lord's song. not that important to consider the title of this moment. What is it? It is essentially one scene. The whole book is one scene. It's a scene between two characters, a guy called Arjuna and a guy called Krishna. Now, Arjuna is in charge of an army, and the scene is a battlefield before the battle. So Arjuna is arrayed with his army on one side of the battlefield, and across the battlefield is another army poised for war also. And so the book opens with that scene. And Arjuna asks his chariot driver, because Arjuna is like the guy in charge. He's a big deal. He's the prince. He's an archer. And he rides around the back of a chariot and shoots arrows. And there's a guy that drives the chariot, runs the horses. His name is Krishna. And Krishna, he says to his driver, Krishna, pull the chariot out in the middle of the battlefield. I want to look around. And so Krishna does. And Arjuna opens up his heart. He says, I don't want to fight. This is meaningless. This is pointless. Isn't killing wrong? Isn't it a sin? If I let this battle begin an hour from now, half of us will be dead. And for what? And I know half the guys on the other side, and over here I see my brothers and uncles and friends from school. It's like, he starts to panic. His mouth goes dry. He starts to tremble. He drops his bow. He crumbles to the ground, and he's having an anxiety attack. He can't face what he must do. And that's chapter 1. And you expect Krishna, who, spoiler alert, turns out to be a god, you expect Krishna would say, you know what? You're right. Killing is wrong. Let's all go home. But that's not what Krishna says. And as the book goes on, Krishna is eventually revealed to be an avatar of Lord Vishnu. He's essentially the Hindu Jesus, just as Christians believe that Jesus is God the Father in physical form. So too, Hindus believe that Krishna is Lord Vishnu in physical form. The only difference is Hindus have lots of these avatars, not just one, as Christianity does. So when Krishna speaks, you are getting like the God's honest truth, right? This is a sacred book. And for devotional Hindus, Krishna is a deity, just like Jesus is for many Christians. So Krishna tells Arjuna at the beginning of chapter 2, your words have wisdom, but you must get up and fight. You have to do this. And for the next 17 chapters, Krishna, counsels and teaches Arjuna, and by extension all of us, as to how he should go about this action, because action is unavoidable. Again, here's that word, karma, or action, right? You can't not act. It's just the way it's got to be. And so Krishna's message is essentially to all of us, because each of us is the Arjuna of our own lives. And that's what makes the Gita so appealing, is it's not just for monks and scholars and specialists. It's for working people. Arjuna's a regular guy. He doesn't have time to go meditate in the woods all day. He's got work to do. He's got family, and a mortgage. And so is there a spiritual path for us, for you and I, who are ordinary, to use the language of Hinduism, householders, family people with bills and ordinary lives? And the answer is yes. And in a way, Krishna's counsel to Arjuna over the next 17 chapters is to all of us, how to be in the field of action, intentionally, consciously, mindfully, compassionately, yet decisively. And Gandhi, this is Gandhi's favorite book, right? And everybody knows he's a pacifist, right? The last thing he would love is a pro-war book. So the Gita is not a pro-war book, but Krishna essentially teaches Arjuna, look, first thing you have to understand is everything is God. All the people on the other side of the field, all the guys on your side, you're all Atman. The body will be born and the body will die, but the Atman within, the universal spirit within, is birthless and deathless. It will go on. And therefore, everybody alive, you and I, are manifestations of Brahman Atman, are manifestations of the Godhead, of ultimate reality. And our lives are purposeful. Brahman Atman took form as you, took form as me for a reason. And the passions that I feel, the love that I feel, the work that I am drawn to do, that is Brahman's work. And so in chapter 3, Krishna says to Arjuna, one who shirks action, one who avoids action. You want to sit in a Chase lounge and read trash novels the rest of your life. He says, one who shirks action does not attain freedom. No one can gain perfection by abstaining from work. Indeed, there is no one who rests for even an instant. All creatures are driven to action by their own nature. So we are already in the field of action by virtue of having taken form in this world. And I am driven to action by my own nature. I'm thirsty. I'm going to drink some water. I don't want to live an unsheltered life, so I'm going to do what it takes to get a house. I don't want to be lonely. I'm going to do what it takes to find a partner. I don't want to starve, so I'm going to get some food. And we are driven to these actions by our own nature. So no one can abstain from action. There's no such thing as not acting. Even when you're holding still, there are processes going on. So the only question is not, should I act or should I not act? That's answered already. You can't not act. Now the only question is, what kind of action are you going to take? What kind of work, or what is the purpose of your action going to be? And in still chapter 3 of the Gita, verse 8 and 9, Krishna goes on, he says, fulfill all your duties. Action is better than inaction. Even to maintain your body, Arjuna, you are obliged to act. Yeah, like I just said, selfish action imprisons the world. Act selflessly without any thought of personal profit. Now the perennial wisdom is welling up. Just as all the great wisdom teachers taught, don't work for your own ego, work in the consciousness of service. Selfish action imprisons the world. He goes on in verse 10, through selfless service, you will always be fruitful and find the fulfillment of your desires. Do you see what Krishna just did? He just destroyed the false dichotomy between egotism and altruism, right? The idea that, well, I'm either all in it just for myself or I'm sacrificing my needs to help others. You're either altruistic and a saint and completely self-effacing, or you're a selfish jerk. That's the sort of ridiculous ham-fisted dichotomy you sometimes hear. But look what Krishna just did. He just collapsed it. It's both and here's how. Do what is your work to do, but in the consciousness of selfless service. And then Krishna promises you will always be fruitful and you will find fulfillment of your desires. You'll get what you need if you give it away. It's a great spiritual paradox, right? You only get to keep what you give away. You only receive what you give. Have we not learned this lesson 1,000 times in our lives? You want love in your life? Find a way to be loving. You want economic freedom in your life? Let go and let affluence or circulation happen. Be more generous and watch your relationships enrich and your income increase. I'm not giving financial advice here. I'm speaking in a general sense. And this is why he goes on in verse 15, Krishna, he says, every selfless act, Arjuna, is born from Brahman. Remember, Brahman is not even a god. Brahman is the ground of being, the sacred, formless source from which all things come and to which all things return. All of us are inseverably one with Brahman. But yet Brahman is still this higher sacred reality. The technical term for this particular theology is panentheism. You can look that up later. Not pantheism. Put an en right in the middle there. Panentheism. Yeah. Going on. Every selfless act, Arjuna, is born from Brahman, the eternal, infinite Godhead. Brahman is present in every act of service. All life turns on this law, O Arjuna. Those who violate it, indulging the sense for their own pleasure and ignoring the needs of others, have wasted their life. But those who realize the Atman, the Brahmanatman within them, are always satisfied. Having found the source of joy and fulfillment, they no longer seek happiness from the external world. They have nothing to gain or lose by any action. Neither people nor things can affect their security. The ignorant work for their own profit, Arjuna. The wise work for the welfare of the world without thought for themselves. That is pretty brutal and pretty amazing. And I want to just add a couple pieces from chapter 4 because it fleshes this out even more fully. Now, Krishna is talking to Arjuna and revealing himself with each chapter as this divine avatar. So this is how Krishna puts it. He says, my true being is unborn and changeless. I am the Lord who dwells in every creature. Through the power of my own Maya, I manifest myself in finite form. Now, don't miss that middle part. I am the divinity that dwells in every creature. Look, in this Hindu Indian sense, if all is one, if Brahman is all there is, then you and I are already part of it, only we don't know it. Take this in. So everything about Krishna that's divine, he's saying, I'm just the divine presence within you. We are all Krishna. What Paul might call in the New Testament, the Christ consciousness, the inner Christ. And then Krishna says, whenever Dharma, and Dharma means, truth or law or order or purpose, whenever Dharma declines and the purpose of life is forgotten, I manifest myself on earth. I am born in every age to protect the good. And now this last bit, those who know me as their own divine self break through the belief that they are just the body and are not reborn as separate creatures, the end of reincarnation. Such a one, again, someone who has realized their divine nature, or in Buddhist terms, awakened, or who has attained metanoia, if I could use last week's term in that Christian sense. Such a one, Arjuna, is united with me. You come into the kingdom of heaven. Delivered from selfish attachment, fear, and anger, filled with me, surrendering themselves to me, purified in the fire of my being. Many have reached the state of unity in me. And then finally, this is the clinger. I'm going to get this tattooed on myself one of these days if I ever get the courage. It's the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 11. Krishna says, as they approach me, so I receive them. All paths, Arjuna, lead to me. Let that sink in. As they approach me, so I receive them. What did Krishna just say? He just said, be a Muslim if you're a Muslim. Be Jewish if you're Jewish. Be an atheist if you're atheist. But love what you love. Find something that makes you sizzle with enthusiasm. Throw yourself into your passionate engagement in the consciousness of service, in the consciousness of compassion, knowing that as you generously give what has been given to you, like all of my talents and abilities and passions and abilities and limitations and everything else are not of my own making. I am Brahmanatman, in the infinite, eternal, formless presence, in temporality, in the field of time, in physical form. My life is an expression of Brahman. We are all like waves on the surface of the ocean. I'm rising up over here, you're rising up over there. None of us realizing we are just the ocean waving. And so this is the sense in which now I can when I'm reminded of these things, I can go back into my to-do list with a whole different consciousness, with a sense of peace, of restfulness, of relaxation. Even my to-do list becomes a Chase Lounge now. And through right action, as Buddha called it, we tap into our own eternal sacred essence, and the eternal sacred essence that gives manifestation to everybody you know, everybody you meet, every situation you find yourself in, the beauty of the world. This is that deep sense of joy and connection that Aristotle called eudaimonia or eudaimonia. That means the deep satisfaction that one experiences when one is realizing one's potentials, when one is practicing one's, I guess I'll use the word abilities or gifts or talents, or, you're good at stuff that nobody else can do as well as you. Figure out what that is and do it and give it. And in that service, there is great joy. Now, that doesn't mean everything you do is going to work out. It's going to be perfect. Like, life is a big mess. There's jumping to the very end of the Gita, chapter 18, verse 48. Krishna says, no one should abandon duties because he sees defects in them. Every action, Krishna says, every activity is surrounded by defects as a fire is surrounded by smoke. I have that one on my refrigerator. Every action, every activity is surrounded by defects as a fire is surrounded by smoke. If you're going to take action here in the messy world of matter and energy and other people and cross purposes and confusion and ignorance and suffering, yeah, it's barely going to work. Everything you do is going to have all kinds of imperfect edges around it. So what? Do it anyway. When there's a fire, there is smoke. The two go together. Action creates imperfection. You see why Krishna is telling Arjuna that. Because if he goes into war and kills those people, a lot of people will die. If he doesn't do anything, they'll come and attack, and a lot of other people will die. Either way, people are going to die. So how do we do this? How do we embrace the imperfection? I found a poem that might help. So today I'm going to leave you here as we close with a poem by William Stafford. William Stafford, 1914 to 1993. I'm just discovering his work. It's just beautiful. So this is a poem by William Stafford called You and Art. Your exact errors make a music that nobody hears. Your straying feet find the great dance, walking alone. And you live on a world where stumbling always leads home. Year after year fits over your face. When there was youth, your talent was youth. Later, you find your way by touch, where moss redeems the stone. And you discover where music begins before it makes any sound. Far in the mountains, where canyons go still as the always following, ever new flakes of snow. You and Art by William Stafford. Okay, my friends, thanks for stopping by and joining me once again for Friday Reflection. I so appreciate you. Hope to see you at the Joseph Campbell webinar on Tuesday and at all the upcoming Friday Reflections. Bye. See you on the other side.